What's up, Cowboys Nation? Thank you guys so much for joining us on this wonderful Wednesday evening. As always, it's your girl Cravin Cowboys in the building, and guys, I got my girl Star in the building with me. How you doing tonight, sis?
What's up? What's up, everybody? Y'all know we glad to be here for another episode of Star Chasers Girls Talk Ball. Hope y'all can hear me good. But yeah, we excited. We're gonna give ourselves some for being here once again to bring y'all Dallas Cowboys content. But y'all know when we before we get into the content, y'all please like the video. Please like the video on each of our channels. If you're on Twitter, I did post a direct link to my YouTube. I appreciate you guys being on Twitter, and I stream to Twitter because that's my biggest platform. But a lot of you guys, I need y'all to help me out by subscribing, please, to my YouTube channel. I just said if everybody subscribed to my YouTube channel, I'd already be monetized. So if y'all can help me by subscribing to my YouTube channel, again, the link is go to my page. You'll see the link to my show. Please go to Mickey's channel, Cravin Cowboys, to like her video and share it as well, and subscribe to our YouTube channels, as well as donate to our Cash App, which is there present on the screen. If you guys feel so kindly to do so.
Yes. Respects to everything Star said. Thank you guys for showing support. Shout out to Lou's Take in the chat early. Kelvin Hicks, thank you guys for following us. As always, you guys, make sure you guys follow these content creators. Lou, of course, is just really on a tear. I mean, there's so many videos coming out, working with the content creator community, really doing some really great work. I love to see you guys staying busy and really just putting out really educational stuff, at least, for me, someone who's, still trying to learn, get a grasp on this, sport, some of the intricacies that I don't really know a lot about, the offensive line, even some of the film, of our incoming rookies. Definitely good to learn from some of these veteran, very advanced content creators. And also shout out to Dak Owns, Bring Them Baskets, aka Dak Owns Filthy, joining the show this evening. Kelvin.
That's our guy. We appreciate that. One of our loyal followers and supporters. So really appreciate everybody being here. Kelvin too, and I know there'll be more people coming, but we really, really, really appreciate everybody rocking with us in the chat.
Yes, facts. And we're going to go ahead and jump into the show. Just a lot of news coming up this past week. I'm definitely, like Star said, before when we really initially jumped on here, very excited about, to bring you guys news from OTAs. Schottenheimer had, another press conference. Michael Irvin, I'm saying, definitely happy to hear, some of what he had to say this past week. I think it was Friday. I think he said he visited, not just him, but also the Legends community that Shotty created, visited the Cowboys practice. Media has also had access to OTAs over the past couple of weeks, so definitely good to get some interesting nuggets. We're definitely going to dive into some of those this evening as well, and just really give you guys some of our opinions, some of our takes on how we think some of our guys are coming along in practice, but also once again the effect that Shotty is having not only on our players now, but the older legends, as he called them, that he's bringing in, making them feel welcome, making them feel like part of the facility, a part of the team, interacting with the coaches as well, them kind of getting a feel. And, I think for Shotty, it's not just about, it's for me, I don't think it's about just getting the trust of the players, the front office, the coaching staff. He wants the trust of the entire organization. I think he's really taken that to heart. And as we spoke about before, he brought breakfast for the admin side of the Star, the people who kind of work behind the scenes. And now he's kind of bringing some of the older veteran. He created the Legends community, as Michael Irvin kind of alluded to in his live. I don't know if it was a live show, but the video that he recorded over the weekend, and just saying that he really just kind of gave an invitation to these players to kind of come in, speak to the players, be around them. He didn't say that necessarily had to be friends, but he definitely said that he would hope that they would become kind of close and kind of start to kind of build these bridges, if you will, between these generations. I think, I mean, sis, I don't know if you remember. I mean, I'm sure you do remember. It was just a couple of years ago where under Mike McCarthy, some of these players were even, when we were going through kind of those back-to-back matchups against the 49ers, it was kind of, I hate to use the word weird, but it was just kind of a little unnerving to hear some of the players talk about, we're not really, I wasn't really big on following 49ers and Cowboys growing up, or I wasn't really big on rivalry or the history about what goes on. I'm just kind of worried about the year that I'm in right now, and that's understandable. But some people kind of just need that connection to the past to kind of in Cowboys, regards, kind of know where you came from and what you're trying to build upon. So, what are some of your thoughts on that, sis? And how do you feel about Schottenheimer kind of creating this alternate community for the older players to kind of come in and kind of connect with the younger players?
Yeah, I think that I really do think that Shotty is doing, like you said, like, he's not just trying to get the trust of his players, but he's also, or the coaches, but he's also trying to get the trust of um the entire organization. What's up, Big Dad? Glad to see you. But and so it's like every step that he's taken, I know that there's some of my content brothers and sisters that kind of create a size of them because they're like, I don't know if this ping pong stuff is necessary. I don't know if this taking the guys out to paintball is necessary. Like where's the football stuff?
Yeah,
And I think that my response to that would be that we've been focusing on just football. You know what I'm saying? Like that's really been the focus. Yes, I know Mike had like family day and stuff like that.
yeah,
But we all know Mike McCarthy didn't have a real close relationship with his players. Doesn't mean his players didn't like him. I think his players respected him highly, but we all knew. I mean, and this goes back to Mike McCarthy's Green Bay days. And I'll be honest, I didn't want to admit it and stuff like that, but when you look at big games with Mike McCarthy, there was always meltdown. Shout out to Coach Marv, who the one who really, 'cause Coach Marv he's seen Mike McCarthy, but he's the one who really exposed that and was like, this man in big moments he always crashes. So these wild fallouts that we're seeing under
yeah,
him, where we just are getting our asses beat and there's nothing we can do about it. This is what he. This is Mike McCarthy. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that Mike McCarthy just didn't. What's up, Family First Sports? Glad to see you. I
shout
think
out
that
to Swain too.
Swain too. I think Mike McCarthy just didn't have that energy that you needed
Yeah,
to inspire his guys and get them over the hump. It was like if the team is hot, they gonna we gonna stay hot. We gonna beat the shit out of the team. All the starters are sitting, going into the fourth quarter. But when we were losing,
yeah,
it was just
it
like a dog
showed.
race. It was like we couldn't. And sometimes I'm not gonna say we didn't fight back because in Green Bay game offensively we fought back. You know, I think of the Ravens game. I think both sides fought back, offense and defense. That's why I
Yeah,
don't buy or I never bought to the narrative that the team was quitting on Mike or that they didn't believe in him. I just think that Mike did not have. It's a different game here, so he just didn't have or know how to play the game. I just really feel like a marriage between him and Jerry just never should have worked. But anyway, I'm kind of got off topic. I want to talk about the camaraderie and like why those things matter. And it's like we've been focused on football, but now Shotty is trying to go beyond that because that's what really in the playmaker has been talking about this for years. Like that is what bonds the players outside football.
yeah,
Like that's what makes them. Dion bonded with all the players when he came by playing ping pong. So the ping pong table is kind of like symbolic to our history, as the Dallas
yeah,
Cowboys. And so, but the playmaker would always say, like, are these guys close? Where's the brotherhood? Because it's like if you're close and you're playing for your brother, you shouldn't see these types of results. And it's that type of brotherhood that's able to pull you out of high conflict moments.
yeah.
We've talked about how under Mike it seemed like it was the defense versus the offense. And it was like some
Hmm.
people on the offense are close, some people on the defense are close. But when you look at both sides, it didn't look like they were together. And you could just get that from how the players talked about each other, who they're actually hanging out with. And then,
Yeah,
yeah, all of that stuff. So I really do think that Shotty is trying to do all he can to build relationships with his players, not to be a kiss ass, or a buddy, but to really get into the psyche of his players. I think that that's needed. Um, your players are going to play hard for you if they actually know you and trust you. And people,
yeah,
so Brady clearly won a Super Bowl the way that he did it. Dan Quinn got to a NFC Championship the way that he did it. It's just that I feel like those two coaches that they were not fit for Dallas, and so what we're trying to see is Shoddy a fit for Dallas. Now he's done
yeah,
everything right. He has done everything right so far. I can't say he's done anything wrong so far, but of course, we have to see once we get into the season how he navigates the front office because we know we do have a middling front office. But I do think that Shoddy, especially with bringing these legends on, that's just another layer of he because he knows what Michael Irvin said about him. He knows Michael Irvin said on live national television it was the worst hire possible. He
Mm-hmm.
Michael Irvin said we made a huge mistake and we should have chose Deion. So he knows what all of these greats and legends are saying about him, but he has it in his spirit to say, I want to prove these guys wrong. And
Yeah.
I'm going to do it by showing it, basically. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to talk
Yeah.
it, but I'm also going to do my best to back it up.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that, and shout out to John Jones as well, who also came in with us to join us, and I definitely agree with that, sis. I like what you said about that, and also to your point, and it's not just a one time thing. That's really what I love is that Shai is going to make it a more often thing where I didn't listen to the whole interview or the whole live show that Urban did, I think yesterday, but he said that he plans on doing it again, and he said that he even talked to Troy Aikman. He said that he even wanted to join in with the players to kind of get a feel for the atmosphere. So for this to be, hopefully, fingers crossed, an ongoing thing for these, the older, if you will, older, younger generation to kind of, lock arms and just kind of look forward to the four goals that they have. They can kind of discuss it. If they look to the history of the Cowboys, some things they may look, things that are taken down, some things that are noted, but everything doesn't come through history written in books, right? This is sometimes that oral history. So I think that's one thing that they can get from these veteran players is that some things that maybe kind of kept, or maybe kind of kept.
I got to give you a clap on that. You said what did you say? You said some things you don't
Yes,
get through oral history.
yeah. I think some things that some of these players maybe may have went through behind closed doors, or maybe that's something they didn't want to share. Maybe some players maybe had some insecurity that they were dealing with. Some of these rookies. I'm not saying all rookies go through the same thing, but 9 times out of 10, go through similar, trying to acclimate to the league, acclimate to the team, kind of gain chemistry with their new teammates, not just the guys you went to school with, but also the new pros who, I mean, we've seen it not just with the Cowboys, but I don't know if we've seen any players in the Cowboys necessarily say that they wouldn't take anyone underneath their wings, but we've seen it across the league quarterbacks who've come out and say, well, that's not my job. I'm going to focus
Oh
on
yeah,
what I need to do. There are quarterbacks. I think Roethlisberger, when he's playing, Aaron Rodgers, I think, said some things like that. So sometimes these rookies may hit a wall. Saying maybe dealing with some of their, um, possible teammates in the future if they make the team, make the roster, things like that. But some of them may hit a wall and may feel like they have a hard time communicating with their with vets. And I mean, I think that's really anybody who enters a new environment. You're just getting used to it, and something not necessarily shy, but maybe nervous to maybe make new relationships. So I think that's why Schottenheimer kind of broke the ice initially with the players and coaching staff and amongst other players. And now you're bringing in the older players who, like, I have a clip I didn't get a chance to upload, but just like you said, it's just like his initial Michael Irvin's initial reaction is that you want to be able to bring in a coach who has a new look on the league, someone who knows who's keep up with the league, but someone who knows also the history of the Cowboys. So I think just like you said, Shadi is kind of connect that with bringing the older players in and trying to teach these newer players. Because even in the video that I was going to upload, Irvin said something about 40 years as a generation, and in about 10 years, Cowboys have had about a 30-year draft, give or take. 30-year drought, give or take. So he said in about 10 years, you could almost have a whole generation who haven't seen any kind of Cowboys championships, Super Bowl, things like that. And really just kind of give a little bit of context. He did make that video like right at championship weekend. So we hadn't seen Washington play. We hadn't seen the Eagles play the Super Bowl yet. So feelings were kind of raw, I didn't even go. So Urban felt like us, right? It felt like the fans. We needed a change. We need something different. Needed new eyes on the organization. So even he said, if you're coming from inside the organization of, if you will, where the problem was, how can you rehire someone who's already there, right? Like, how can you reach the players in a new way? And I mean, even Urban said he just needed time to kind of see what he could offer. And I think with that time, with that experience being actually in the building and seeing what's kind of transpiring, I think that's really just giving him a really just a sign of encouragement, not just for, his team, his heart for the team, but also just what this team can look like going into this year and also into the future.
absolutely. And I think that, and I can talk while you try to bring up that clip if you want to.
Okay,
Um,
okay, all right. Yeah, I'll try to bring it up right quick.
but I think that I want to go back to what you said about oral history, but also talking about how, you know, it was sad and disappointing that our current players like just didn't really know the
There,
history.
Right.
Like they don't know the history. They don't really care that much about the history. And I know, that I think sometimes like Mike would like show them videos or whatever, maybe before a big rivalry or something like that. But
Yeah.
ultimately, it just felt like the players didn't feel connection. And I think that history is important. I think that Mike McCarthy focused on a lot of we gotta we gotta beat to the tune of our own drum, and we don't need to worry about all the Super Bowls in the past.
Right.
We don't have to worry about, one thing he did with Green Bay that I didn't like, where I think we came out flat in 2023 is like he was like, it's no big deal. This just any other game. Like he tried to paint things as oh, it's just another game, and we it's just business as usual. But hell no, it's
Yeah.
not. Versus Green Bay, it's never no business as usual. It will
Facts.
never be business as usual. These are guys that took away two, three, four. I don't know, but I know in my lifetime took away two chances for us to go to an NFC championship game.
Right.
So then they beat our ass in our house the year that everybody thought we was going to the Super Bowl. So it's like it will never be just it's just business as usual. But it's like
Yeah.
Mike McCarthy, he didn't have our history in him. He had Green Bay in him.
Exactly.
He
Facts.
had the
Facts.
Cowboys history. So it's like but you see, Shotty, he don't have all of the Cowboys history either. He knows that he only been here for 4 years, but that's why he's bringing in the guys. And again, this is not me glazing Shotty because I do know the playmaker visited when Mike was there. I know Troy did, but I'm just saying this community that the playmaker said that he's building. Like I don't think Mike built this community where he pretty much wants the vets. I don't know how he's structuring it, but it seems like he's trying to be intentional with the vets and say, I want you guys to have y'all hands on my guys because
Hmm.
I believe in the power of history. I believe in the power of camaraderie. And if we ever want to get back to a certain place, you need to know where you came from. If we want to get back to greatness, we need to know that these players need to be amongst these Hall of Famers and these great players to really know what does it take because we've never been in a championship ever. We've never been in a
Right.
Super Bowl. So
Facts.
we need that information. We need that help because without that, you just got guys of what they know, but they
Right.
don't.
Really, no, really essentially just going to work every day. Like, right. I mean, if you don't know the history of your organization, these guys are really essentially just showing up to play football and then going home. Like if you're not playing for a true purpose, if you feel like you're not playing for your team, you know what I'm saying? I mean, even some of these other organizations, the Lions, I mean, not saying they're like the Cowboys. I'm just trying to use their history as far as they haven't run a championship in so long. Their fans were definitely hyped up, on their playoff run, a potential Super Bowl run, and even when things kind of went sideways, there were some questionable things that Dan Campbell did. Their fans never turned on him. Their fans never said, "Oh well, this will never get done." The drought continues. No, every year they keep pursuing, and having a coach like Dan Campbell, I'm sure gives them, a fire in their belly. You know what I'm saying? That they kind of keep them looking forward to years coming on. So I think that's really what not saying that McCarthy couldn't give us that. I just think that's what the fans are looking for. Looking for some kind of fire, looking for some kind of hope. And I think with Shotty kind of taking the extra, kind of going the extra mile with connecting with the players and really just kind of connecting the organization as a whole. I think he's just really reaching them on. It's not all emotional, but I think there's more than just physical ties to football. It's also emotional, it's also mental ties to it. So I think he's just really reaching them on all those levels.
Facts. It's more than that. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that's
Yeah.
why he's doing these things because he's like, it's the closeness that's gonna bring these guys together to win a championship. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the actual brotherhood and the camaraderie. Um, X's and O's matter, but in order to pull when you're facing adversity, it's the brotherhood that gets you over it, not X's and O's. Because we've seen when schemes get stopped. Schemes get stopped in the biggest moments. Players can be
Yep.
limited in the biggest moments. So you gotta dig from something else. What happens when the schemes start working? You know what I'm saying? What happens when the game
Hmm.
plan is not working? That's where you measure or you separate the good from the great.
Right,
who
right.
can make adjustments and overcome. So yeah, but we can play. Let's
Yeah,
get
just
this.
it's a quick second.
And what's up to you, Stephen White? Glad to see you. I see John Jones came in as well as Marcus
Facts.
Rico. What's up with you guys? Glad to have y'all here in the chat.
That was
Yes,
critical
appreciate you guys for
mass.
joining us.
It was time to bring somebody in here that could shake things up and grab this last leg of Cowboys Nation. If we got 30 years right now, life expectancy is 100 years. That means by math, a third of Cowboys Nation has never felt or lived the glory of a championship story. Don't even know about it. How the hell can they pass something on down or pass it down when they don't even know about it? In 10 years, that would have been a generation that knows nothing about a championship from the so-called America's team. And worse yet, that generation has seen total domination.
Right, and that'll be this clip will actually be for later on in the show. Shout out to Skywalker and Aisha Morrison who are doing a great show, a great job on their show. They're really bringing a lot of information. I love that Miss Aisha Morrison, friend of the show. Thank you for joining us that time. Yeah,
But like,
she.
bring
Yeah,
her back.
yes, yes, she's amazing. She's bringing really a lot to the table, and I love the insight that she's bringing in. We'll definitely jump into that later on in the show, talking about how the defense is facing a new offense in practice. So we're definitely excited about that. But yeah, I just wanted to play that clip because I just like the turnaround from from playmaker. Because first of all, he was able to be honest because we know that playmaker's honest and is transparent and has no problem being in front of how he feels. But I just like that he was able to come back around and be like, look, I spent time with this guy. I've seen what he's kind of implemented, and then everyone around him is kind of, kind of giving the same, kind of saying the same things. The player just talked about the change in energy. Stephen Jones, mentioned about the change in energy. For like I said, I'm not sure how close Schottenheimer is with the front office because, like, they are giving him pretty much, what he wants. But at the same time, I think they're, still going to keep an eye on it when the season starts to see if he actually get this implemented. But I like the freedom, if you will, that they're kind of giving him, and also the support as well. Stephen Jones spoke about the energy being different at practice and having all the guys involved, and just I think it's a great surge. And I'm not gonna lie, I like seeing hearing good news from Stephen Jones and seeing that. I don't know what's different this year, but not to get too off topic with Shoddy, but I also like the support that Stephen Jones is throwing behind Michael Parsons as well. This past week, as we're still seeing continuous questions, about why is Micah not there and Micah's contract and how, the questions are like, how can he connect if he's not there, or how can he really meet your expectations if he's not here at practice? And I just love that Schottenheimer, and now like I mentioned, Stephen Jones kind of saying, he's connected, like there's no drop off. There's communication. He's keeping up. And they mentioned that he's traveling, but they also that he's keeping up with this regimen. That he's going to be ready by the time he comes back next week for mandatory mini camp and also for training camp when it comes later on near the fall. So I like that they're showing support. Not saying it's completely different from previous years, but we've heard the Zeke who, we've heard the them taking forever to pay Dak, to pay CD, and yeah, they're taking the time with Micah, but they're saying things like pretty much letting us know it's going to happen. I think Michael tweeted out saying now it's in the front office's hands. Stephen Jones kind of mentioning that, hey, we're just kind of at a standstill. He hasn't really gave too much an update about it, but he just kind of saying, for at least for me, I feel like even though it make it close, get done close to training camp, I feel like it's still gonna still gonna get done for one of the best players in the league.
Absolutely, and shout out to Angie, Common Sense, y'all snuck in here. Really appreciate
Yes,
y'all.
thank you guys.
Appreciate y'all support, and I agree with that. I think we said it last week, but we continue to hear it. Is there's just different energy. There's different energy, and then Shoddy actually spoke about this at his press conference because he was asked specifically about like why is he doing practices like
Yeah.
basically like where is he gathering, did he plan this or like where did he come up with this practice structure? And I mean, he pretty much said like this is the practice structure of Pete Carroll, but he's been clear since the beginning
Yeah.
that Pete Carroll Yes, he is the son of Marty Schottenheimer, NFL legendary coach. But he says, like, who I am now, the coach that I am now is I am a Pete Carroll. I'm from the Pete Carroll tree. Like, I'm a Pete
Yeah.
Carroll protege. So everything that Pete did, that's what he's implementing. So these high energy practices, he was like, I remember when I first got there. He's like, Pete was 70 years old and he was everywhere. He was outrunning me. He was like, and I was like, damn, I need. He's like, I was 40, and I was like, damn, I need
Right.
to because Pete is everywhere. And people say that about Pete. Like, he's old, but the guy still got a six pack. Like, his energy is through the
Yeah.
roof. And he's like, Shotty's like, if we don't bring the energy, if we're not talking shit, if we're not screaming, if we're not holding people accountable, the coaches aren't doing it, then how can you expect the players to do it? And
Right.
so I think that, he was like, players, they may not always want to practice, you know what I'm saying? Especially when you get into the season and stuff like that, it's hard to have that same zeal and energy as OTAs because you haven't touched the field yet. He was like, but if the coaches bring that energy, it's going to pass off to the players, and so he's trying to establish that now. We're just an OTA, but he's like, I don't care because I'm trying to establish my culture now. I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to establish my culture. I think that he's trying to let everybody know that, you know, if you want change, right? You want change, you're gonna have to change. If you want
Yeah.
like as simple as that, like if you want change, you're gonna have to embrace and implement change.
Mm-hmm.
Think that, Mike McCarthy and stuff, the practices were critiqued, like this is soft and all of this type of stuff. So, and of course, we haven't gotten a pass yet, so there's only so much you can do. But just to see that he's even now when we can't really hit stuff like that, he's like, I don't care. Like we still need to bring the energy and do the best that we can. And
Yeah.
you know, Shotty, he talks a lot about we want to be the best in the world, best in the world. I mean, he says it a lot. Like we're here to win a championship. We want to be the best in the world. And
Yeah.
I feel like he's not putting that out there and continuously saying that for no reason. I believe that he honestly believes that, and that's what he's literally working to every day. And even bringing up the 30-year drought, he's like, I don't worry about the 30-year drought because he's like, listen, every year we just move on. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Yeah.
every year we're trying to win a Super Bowl. He said, will we win a Super Bowl this year? I think so. But if we don't, like, we just gonna move on to 2026 because
Mm-hmm.
that's the only way that you can win a Super Bowl. You can't win a Super Bowl by worrying that you didn't win it last year. You know what I'm saying? You got to put all
Right.
your attention. He's like, and the way we do that is trying to have the best practice in the NFL every single day. And so these are just standards that he's trying to establish. This competitive culture he's doing his best to establish. We didn't even bring up the playmaker. There's a clip where he talks about how, he sat in, what's up, Philly, 100 grand, that's my guy, Jamison Taylor. But he was saying how the playmaker, sorry, I was kind of lost my train of thought, but he was saying how in the wide receiver room, like, they're having the guys compete. And he was like, in my day, he's like, I just knew my assignment and like
Mm-hmm.
some other assignment around me. He's like, I didn't know every assignment. And so it's like Shotty is requiring excellence. He's requiring more from these players. It's not enough just to know your assignment. You need to know everybody's assignment. And he was like, every day, Shotty's like, every day, there's a winner and there's a loser. And so that's what they're trying to establish. That either you're a winner or you're a loser. There's no in between. And if you lost yesterday, then you need to be trying to win today. You know what I'm saying? Because that matters to him. If you keep losing, like Shotty doing all this fun shit, but he's taking all of this fun shit into account.
Right. Right.
Like, I'm gonna keep calling you. Like, if you're continuing to lose, I'm gonna keep calling you out, and then it's saying something to me because it's like, if you keep losing and you're not getting better, then that shows me that you're a loser, and maybe you shouldn't be on my field.
That's
Like,
real, sis. That is so real. I didn't even think about that. Like you said, like it's one thing. Exactly. It's one thing to do these fun activities, but you said like behind the scene, he's like, okay, like it'll be able to determine whether these players are not necessarily taken for a joke, but whether they're taking the activity seriously or not. Like you said, like, okay, you had 3 days in a row. Oh man, you still ain't won. But at the same time, it's like, okay, how come you haven't won yet? How come you haven't fought back to one yet? You know what I'm saying? So I'm glad you brought that up because it's just like, yeah, you may take it as a game, or okay, why are you guys playing like you start the meeting like why are you guys playing ping pong? Why are you guys playing basketball? You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's like why aren't you competing against your guys? Like why aren't you taking it as serious? Because like you said, what's established right now, so will take hold, later on in the season is definitely important for later on in the season. So I'm glad you brought that point up. And another thing about that is just that he's allowing these players, or he's inviting these players to be themselves, because he even said that like if I show my true personality, who I am, it'll make the players feel more comfortable to be who they are. So that means they'll truly put their best foot forward. But at the same time, you could genuinely create friendships. You could genuinely create these relationships in this environment. It's not about putting on a I don't want to say putting on the front, but it's not about if you guys will being co-workers with these people. It's not you want
Right,
these guys to
right.
be more than co-workers. You know what I'm saying? Not just guys you see when you come to
More
play
than just
football.
coworkers, exactly.
Exactly, because that was a big point. Since in this offseason, he was talking about it's not just about on the field. It's about showing for these guys. When they have an event. When these guys have things
Right,
planned, it's about showing up for those. You know what I'm saying? So I think he did generally not just for the field, but like you said, but just for this particular time when these guys can't be too physical before when they couldn't even talk football. You got to look for time and space to implement these things when what they say, what idle hands is a devil's play shop. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So these guys are going to have time off coming up. I think he kind of wants. I mean, even now, I think I seen a tweet that said, of course, with Michael Parsons and dealing with contract things and Trayvon Diggs dealing with rehab, they said that they were the only two players missing out of OTAs. So
I mean,
damn near
that's
100.
huge. That's
You know what I'm
huge
saying,
too.
sis? Like I'm like only two people out of because it's not just 52 players and not just the 48 game day roster. It's every single player that undrafted rookies. I'm assuming veterans. Everyone is there. Of course, new coaching staff, things like that, new playbook. But it just shows how engaged that Schottenheimer has these players and just how excited they are to show up every day. Because I mean, these guys like Schottenheimer keeps saying it's voluntary. These guys are here for different reasons, but what's most important is that they're there.
Right. And I agree with that, sis. And, even to tap into Micah, Micah has been here. Micah has been here.
Hmm.
He may not have participated in all OTA activities like this week because it was his birthday, but last week he was here. He's been in and out of since the offseason started, not
Hmm.
paid, still coming, still building relationships, made it a point to be at Zach Martin's retirement. Like Micah has been here and Micah is doing everything he can to have that balance where it's like, listen, I gotta be present, but still, he is, I do believe, preparing to hold out if the Joneses don't get him signed before training camp. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Which is a damn shame. What is our thing? 1-800 or no 877 pay Micah now. Like Micah,
Hmm.
okay, we need to go ahead and get him paid. Um, and get that over with just so that Micah can feel comfortable being on the field
Yeah.
camp day one. But even with that, Micah he went to Europe for his birthday and literally got fresh off the plane and went straight to the Star so that he could be there for media day, so that he could be
Wow.
the team picture. So it's like Micah is taking his new role seriously. And
Yeah.
I think that it is shoddy. I think that shoddy is being very direct with his leaders. I think Shotty's being very direct with everybody, really.
Yeah.
And I feel like Shotty is doing his best to build. That's why he's having these individual dinners and continues like even Trayvon, like he's talking to Trayvon a lot. He's like
Yeah.
talking to him a lot because these players know like what he's trying. Somebody said this. I think shout out to the guy Frankly Football and Set It Off Chris. I think it was one of them on their show, but they were basically saying that I lost my train of thought. But I think what was I saying? I was saying that
About Schottenheimer
oh,
gaining the trust.
I don't know. I just lost my train of thought. But either way, I think that Shotty is basically. Oh, that's what it is. They were saying that Shotty is setting the tone with his players now, so that they go through him and not Jerry. Because in years past, the players knew who the real boss was. They know it was Jerry. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
they know that at the end of the day, Jerry has the final say. So it's like Shotty is trying to build their relationship to where they don't feel compelled to go to Jerry, that they come straight to him. And I think he's also, this is about building respect and relationships and all of this type of stuff. Like that shit that Michael was saying about Mike last year, which it's not like it was a huge deal, but it also wasn't a small deal either. Like how
Yeah.
Michael spoke about Mike McCarthy, it was pretty self-explanatory, how he thought. Because when Micah has a person of respect, he speaks about him a certain way. When he has a relationship with you, he speaks about you a certain way. And when he don't, he speaks about you a certain way. Now, granted, Michael's like, I didn't mean no harm, but it's like
Yeah.
you would never have he would never have even thought about saying things that he said about Mike with Dan Quinn or Zimmer. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Because him and Mike just didn't have that relationship. They didn't. And I
Right.
think that, that was one of the downfalls of Mike. It was like you were close with Dak, which is great, but you have a whole team, bro. Like you have a
Right.
whole it's not just Dak. And I feel like I appreciate Shotty how he's treating Dak. I appreciate how Shotty's answering questions about Dak because I think Shotty is trying to make it clear to his players that I'm not Dak's coach. I'm not here because remember in the offseason, y'all remember in the offseason they kept saying, "Oh, this was Dak pick. Dak pick Shoddy. Dak pick Shoddy. Dak. This is Dak's guy. He's only here because of Dak. He's only here because of Dak." All this stuff. So I think Shoddy is doing his best to say, "Listen, I love Dak. I have a personal relationship with him, but I love Joe Milton. I have a personal relationship with him. I love Mike, and I have a personal relationship with him. I love
Yeah.
Damone Clark, and I have like he's trying to make it clear that Dak is an important piece of the team, but he's not the team." And I love that because we've been saying that. Shout out to Coach Mar. Like, people have been hiding behind Dak Prescott since he stepped on the field in 2016. This whole team has done nothing but ride Dak's coattails since 2016. No accountability because they know on all the sports shows, Dak is going to be to blame. Nobody else going to be brought up. No one else will be brought up. It's only going to be Dak. So I like that Mike is trying, I mean, not Mike, that Shotty is trying to establish Dak is a part of the team, but he is not the team. Like this is a team, and everybody's got to be involved and do their part if we actually want to win a Super Bowl. So yeah. Anyway.
No, I think that's a huge point. Since I just like I said, I like how Schottenheimer's kind of going the extra mile, and like you said, because like we kind of see that late in the season. I mean, and we also kind of felt it in the past too. Like we also kind of felt that McCarthy. We were kind of wondering if he had any kind of relationship with some of the defensive players, and not saying that kind of failed them, but that also kind of leads to some kind of speculation, right? If he was asking a question about someone on defense, he would kind of be like, "Well, I'm not sure." Even last year, when Micah wasn't there doing, I think it was voluntary or maybe mini camp, voluntary mini invol. Was it OTAs?
Yeah, it was OTAs because Micah doesn't miss minicamp. He never has.
Okay.
And
Okay.
he's like, I've never missed a minicamp in 4 years. Like, I'm not missing minicamp. Because if you miss minicamp, you get fined.
Oh, yes. That's what they're talking about with Trayvon Diggs potentially missing out of his contract. I don't know if he's not there for the beginning of the season. I mean, could it stand a reason that he would miss mini camp, mini camp, and training camp coming up?
I don't know. I feel like the relationship between front office and Diggs is bad right now. I think the front office really wants to trade him. I don't know. And Diggs is doing all he can to get on the field sooner than later because I believe that he feels like if you don't get on the field till, which is likely he ain't getting on the field till November or December, you can pretty much bet your bottom dollar like Diggs is like they brought in Elam with Shotty. The way Shotty spoke about Elam yesterday, he is over the moon about it.
Bro, he was getting rave reviews. I mean, the first thing he said was, "Yeah, Florida Gator," and I'm like, okay. So now I'm coming to see.
Yeah,
So he had, not saying he was. I don't know if he was a shoddy pick, but when you have that background, I mean, even I forget the quarterback's coach right now. Shimko from Boston College, and then we see Ezraku coming from Boston College as well, and they kind of pointed out that connection as well. So, I mean, sometimes that can be enough. Sometimes it can be alumni, kind of be the connection of keeping some of these players on. So, I mean, that's a great point, sis. I mean, they also brought on Savone Rebel. I believe that's how you say his name. They brought up Carson. Yes, so
you got all these. You got Izzy still. Then you got these other corners that we really like, but they didn't give much playing time. You got Keemon Hall. You got
yes
Butler who's gonna come back for in show. It's like Diggs is really on the hot seat.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the truth is. Jerry alluded he didn't take his rehab seriously. As soon as he said that, then Diggs dropped the whole documentary saying that he did take his rehab seriously.
Yeah, yeah. All of a sudden, he got a series on because I've been watching the episodes on YouTube. I'm like, so y'all showing? 'Cause I thought it was gonna be for this year, but I didn't realize they were showing the clips from last year. I was like, okay, so I mean, it's only a couple episodes in, but I'm on the same line as you. It's like now you're releasing what you were doing in rehab last season, which is great to see. I mean, I love seeing the relationship with him and Micah. Just really like you talked about earlier, just that camaraderie off the field. So I mean, like you said, it'll be a wonder. Like I wonder if it's like you said, maybe two points of view. Like front office has one point of view versus on Diggs, and maybe Shotty's trying to give him a shot.
Right. Shotty may have a different point of view. I think that's why Diggs is trying to he's staying in consistent and constant communication with Shotty because he wants Shotty to like him. He wants Shotty to know that he's doing everything he can to get back with the team.
Yeah.
And I think if anybody could save Diggs from being traded, it would be Shotty. But Shotty has to win. That's something that's key with Shotty. It's like Shotty, unfortunately here, you're not gonna get to have two seasons where you win 2 to 5 games.
Yeah.
That's not that I'm trying to tell you right now. Like, I'm not saying you're gonna get fired, but I'm saying if you want to keep this control that you have, like you have to win. The Joneses have to see success.
Yeah.
If they see success, then you can do whatever the hell you want to do. But if they see that you're not winning, and they put all of it, because granted, like they're gonna be on Shotty's head because it's like they're pretty much have done besides one pick, which I think we got to add another rotational piece behind Mozzie.
Yeah.
That's my one position where I'm like, we need to fill this. The rest of them, cornerback, I'm not really worried about. Running back, I'm open to adding someone, but I'm not really like too overly concerned.
Yeah.
But I know with the one tech position. But other than that, like Shotty has, thank you, Philly. I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, appreciate you, Philly. Thank you for stopping by.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, I think that they have. I mean, they gave you George Pickens. Like Shotty has to. He has to win. You know what I'm saying? I think that's why it's very important, and it's no excuses because then they're gonna look at it. They're gonna say Dan Quinn didn't need that long. We gave you better personnel then, so it's like that's why Shotty knows. Like he's got to do all he can to have these guys locked in week 1. Because if we start off slow and we start losing, that's when the Joneses, Jerry and Steven, start getting uncomfortable. They start getting uptight.
Yeah.
They start meddling.
Yeah, I mean, especially with how the schedule looks, right? I mean, it's definitely not saying it's not on our side, but I mean, 2 division games starting out, and then a couple tough games after that. With I believe Green Bay is up early. You know what I'm saying? Just the schedule, just overall, is just definitely a mountain for these Cowboys to climb, and I think it's a great opportunity for Shotty because I mean, we see just what he's done with opportunities he's had so far. So it'd be interesting, if they continue to do the things that they are doing, just how it'll affect them. I really want to see, number one, the effect it has during camp, because we're already seeing, just kind of moving along to OTAs. We're seeing, as Shotty said, him giving chances to a lot of his rookies, a lot of these I'll say veteran pickups that they had. Haven't talked a lot about Elam, showing out in camp. I think there was a mention of Miles Sanders, Javonte Williams, looks to be taking up possibly the running back 1. So and we've heard, rookies like Ezra Rocky, Tyler Booker, of course, running with the ones, and then I think we've heard some things about Kenneth Murray, another pick that another guy that they picked up in the offseason through trade. Yeah, saying that he's running through the one. So I mean, there were talks before in previous seasons. Shout out to Boss Cowboys Sports. We talked about Bastards versus Sons, and I know it's a completely different coach. Not sure if it's a different philosophy because, of course, we have the front office who's on top of everything. But I love seeing the kind of the spread of what we're seeing. A lot of players being involved from young to veterans, and I just like that. Just so far, I know it's only been a couple weeks of, and that's of voluntary OTAs, but just seeing just really the involvement and just how they're trying to get these players really to learn the playbook, really to get it down, and just how important it's going to be. I think we're kind of seeing that competition aspect now, of course, through other activities, of course, the OTAs, but I think is really going to show just how tough that they're going to be on these, because of course when it gets down to camp, that's really when it matters. But I think some of these races are going to be won, by a hair. Some of these competitions are really just going to be really close for some of these guys.
I agree with that. If true competition is actually going to be able to persist, and Jerry and Steve are going to stay out of it. I do think
Right.
these battles are going to be close, and I think a lot of some of these battles might even shock us when we say, "Oh wow, he won out," but
Right.
we'll know if true competition persists by who is truly on the field and how they play.
Yeah.
Because if we'll know. We'll know if true competition won out when we see who's on the field and how they actually play. Because we had players on the field last year, we had players on the field under Dan Quinn where it was like, you're performing horrible. So I know you're not on the field.
Right.
I know you're not on the field because you earned it. I know you're just on the field because of some nepotism BS.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely have to see how that works out. Shotty's contract is 4 years, guys. But they've been very tight-lipped about the money and everything like that. I think because people found Mike McCarthy's numbers and he was like one of the lowest paid coaches and stuff. So it's like
Yeah.
they ain't putting out his contract details. I think it's 4 years for sure. But that's about all.
Yeah, 'cause I think they matched it up with Dak and CD's contract.
Right, that's what they did. So it's like we don't nobody know the numbers, but but yeah, that's how long he's here. But
And that,
go ahead.
I'm not gonna say before we go to the talk about OTAs. I love the point that Stephen White brought up. I love the blue chip rejected players we picked up. I think they are worth the dart throw. And we talked about that early in the offseason, sis, about coaches like Aaron Whitecotton. Being able to take up some of these players who were former first round picks. And that's another guy we heard a lot about, Solomon Thomas. Just how stacked and how jacked he is in practice, and just how. And not just his physicality on the field, but he's also taking guys under his wing. Also kind of exemplaring that leadership side, that he has with some of these players, and some of these players are taking those off the field as well. I just love that these like Stephen White said. I just love that these veteran picks are not only good on the field, but they can also have effect on these players off the field too.
Right, they seem to be helping out the locker room, and I think Solomon Thomas. I think. Like Tony Casillas, one of our former players from the '90s team, spoke very highly of him. So, because I haven't listened to the clip. I just kind of like read what the clip was saying. So, but yeah, I do think that he also impressed during the Legends Day. That he impressed, the D linemen when they were in the Legends went into like their individual position rooms and stuff like that. So.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite interesting to see how everything's shaking out. That's why I say, like, I feel like we're doing the Shotty is laying the groundwork. And it is going to work. It's going to help. As long as Jerry and Steven don't meddle too much or at all, it should work. But if they're meddling and stuff like that, then that's when you can see things. And it doesn't mean Shotty gonna be perfect. This is the first time head coach, so yeah, I'm sure he is gonna make some mistakes. I'm sure he's gonna call a bad play. We might lose. I'm sure he's gonna make some game clock management issues. I mean, every coach got that, so it's like Shotty gonna make mistakes. He's not like he's gonna come in here and be perfect. But I do think that
we have to remember that he's in his first year. I mean, your first year in anything, right?
It's like things are changing. He's having a different way of doing things, and so it takes a while to like get it established. So I think we also got to remember that and keep that in mind, because things are going to take some time. Like, yes, we have consistency, but we also are changing things. Like they are changing the cadence. They are changing some things about the players, the quarterbacks, dropbacks, and they're changing things.
Yeah.
So when you change things, but that's why it's good now that our whole team is there now, because we're getting the stars. Last year when we dragged CD's contract, he didn't have a camp. He didn't have a camp. CD had said he missed basically. He hadn't had a camp in over a year. You know what I'm saying? And hadn't had OTAs in 2 years. So it's like, like, I'm glad that CD is there now, building that chemistry, camaraderie. I'm glad the whole team is there. Outside of Michael, who missed this week or missed a couple of days this week because his birthday, and did keep obviously training. But I'm glad everybody is there, locked in. Because that shows a certain type of character. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how many people, and it could be that people were here under Mike as well. I know CD wouldn't. Like CD was not in the building at all. Like as soon as the 23 season ended, CD was out. Like he did not step foot in the building until August of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that's something to really think about. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that
Yeah.
he's here and he's not in France at Fashion Week and doing all this type of stuff, like,
Mm-mm.
that's kind of a big deal to have all your leaders, majority of your leaders,
Yeah.
building that chemistry and leading like they supposed to do.
Yeah.
We can end it on
Oh,
talk a little bit about OTAs. I think you had that clip with Aisha and Sky.
yeah, we could definitely jump into that, and yeah, and then jump off here. And I like you said, I love just the last point that I love because I mean we see how the season starts off, but the season starts off fast. So I just think that, like you said, getting the most head start is the most important thing right now. You're saying with everything changing, and I forgot all about that. Thank you for bringing that up with them changing the cadence. I mean that's huge. I mean that has to literally do with movement on the field, and I think Urban mentioned it in his video that Cowboys are fourth in penalties last season. So hopefully that'll be something that they'll be able to change up coming into this season. Hopefully more of a not necessarily disciplinarian, but hopefully be able to keep the
I mean, we
team
know
disciplined
we
on the
get
field.
because the penalties under Mike McCarthy was out of
Yeah, for years. Yeah,
control. Like his whole tenure here, the penalties were out of control, especially in big moments.
Did you see out there
It's
from
like,
a
there was
schematic
a little bit.
standpoint?
Oh, here we go.
sorry about this. Sis.
No, you good. Go ahead and play it.
Okay. Yeah, you guys, this is just a clip. Like I said earlier, shot at the Skywalker Steel. There's amazing AM work for the Cowboys, amazing morning show. And of course, Miss 2Y, aka Aisha Morrison, just have a great show going on. I love their Sky and 2Y show. They really bring some great information. I got this clip because, of course, Miss Aisha Morrison kind of explains of some of the things that are kind of different offensively, schematically wise. And she just kind of offers what's kind of going on in camp. I just want to play it and then we'll give our thoughts and then we'll jump
Did you
off.
see out there from a schematic standpoint? Is he putting those words into action on the field?
Oh yeah. During the competitive period, I was able to see we're seeing more shifts, misdirection. There were quite a few times the defense was on their heels. I mean, and I'm talking about in the run game specifically, where you see all this motion, you see all this shifting, and then you see Javonte Williams just burst out of the whole other side, like the defense is going in the other direction. And I'm sitting there like, I don't like that defensively, but wait, I can't figure out if this is a good thing or a bad thing because you are scaring me. And again, they're not in pads.
Yeah.
Can't tackle the running back. I got it, but just seeing some of the way that they are, and again, crossing routes. Heavy. I saw a lot of that yesterday. Obviously, I tweeted that Treshaun Holden came across the field. Joe Milton had a great pass to him. They are really trying to. They touched a lot of parts of the field. Dak had a couple of deep balls. They had some intermediate game. Like the running backs, I saw Lipke line out wide. I seen the running backs lining out wide. They're doing a lot of spread. So yeah, I see some of it. Obviously, they're not going to show us too much.
Right.
They're not going to show us too much. But in the little bit that I'm seeing, it is important. I think the shifts and stuff and they're going to be new for this defense. Like some of these guys that have been here and are like, oh, like nah, like this is a different feel. It feels like so.
We got
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, just kind of unpacking that a little bit. Shout out to Miss Aisha Morrison. Like I said, she really is dropping some nuggets. I mean, this kind of goes back to, if you remember, I believe it was 2023. When McCarthy finally put the keys in Dak's hands, and we saw a change after week 6. And I think, and actually, not McCarthy, I'm sorry. Schottenheimer kind of mentions playing the Chargers a couple of years ago when he was talking about Kenneth Murray. But this also where we kind of saw the change, of offense, right? I don't know if we saw it before or after the bye week, but we saw touchdown passes to Brandon Cooks in the end zone. We saw a change. They talked about it. They looked around the league, and that was, the year we saw a lot of shifts in motions with the Dolphins. We saw a lot of teams kind of, really having shifty, fast motions in the offense in the NFL. So I think, I think, like I said, I think Schottenheimer's kind of reflected a lot of his time kind of being in the background, if you will, and just kind of bringing some of those things he learned, now to the forefront now that he has the opportunity. So I like that he's kind of, changing things up in practice, because even Skywalker still makes the point later on in that video that, you perfect what you practice against, right? I mean, we've seen offenses from previous seasons, and from training camp, and then of course practices throughout the year. Uh, the defense saw our offense, saw the Cowboys offense, right? So what was McCarthy doing? Short passes down the field, short passes to the tight end, as Bocce Lombardi says, going up the field and turning right around. They didn't really see crazy offense in their practices. So if they're going, so it's easy, intermediate, and hard. So if they're going against easy in practice, and then they go against a team who plays intermediate, or the most difficult offense, if you will, they're not prepared for that. So I love that they're switching it up this year by having the offense kind of take a more of a difficult approach. Of course, bringing in guys like Riley and bringing in guys like Clayton Adams, excuse me. And I like the effect that they're having, as far as schematically, but also like that he's also challenging the defense as well. It doesn't only improve the offense, but also improve the defense, because they're going to be seeing offenses like that in the league.
Absolutely, and I gotta give you some thumbs up. I gotta give Miss Aisha, because I think
Aisha, she
yeah, Aisha, she's great. She is a brilliant mind. I agree exactly what you're saying, Stephen White. I think that I agree with everything you said. Where you have to practice how you're going to play. You can't practice soft and then think you're going to be able to rev it up. Be tough.
Exactly.
No, like that's just not how.
In a week.
Exactly.
Right.
That's not how it works. So it's like you have to practice. Practice makes perfect, and how you practice is basically how it's going to go on the field. I think that's why Shotty trying to emphasize practice so much, because that's how you get better. That's how you practice, how you train. That is what is kicking in when you're actually in the game. That's how you get bad habits out. That's how you perfect your craft, through training and practice. Like, there's no other way. So I think it's very important, and like you said, it is going to make them sharper. It is going to make them better, right? When we are doing different looks. We have struggled. Our defense has struggled with motion. I'm glad to hear that someone like Damone Clark seems to be diagnosing faster, because that was his biggest downfall. Like, not diagnosing, hitting the wrong holes, putting people up in the wrong position was just a lot of issues. But I'm glad to see that, let's test against it now. So now when we come against these crazy Shanahan, McDaniels, LaFleur, all these offenses where it's all these creative run schemes and motions and all of this stuff, that the defense is more used to seeing that. I'm also happy to see that we are modernizing our offense. Like, it's like everybody else. I always say with our offense, it's like everything just seems hard for us. Then you go and you watch these other teams. It's like guys are wide open. Less talented teams, but guys are wide open.
Right.
With us, every pass that Dak throws is contested. With better talent, it wasn't making sense. And we're like, why is everything always so damn hard for us? But when you look around the league, it ain't that hard. You know what I'm saying? It's like we do science. Everybody else is just doing basic algebra. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you got to evolve. Got to evolve your scheme. I think ultimately Mike McCarthy, he hadn't done the work to evolve his scheme. On that year off, he wasn't upgrading his scheme or nothing like that. And we found that out when we actually saw his scheme on the field. You know what I'm saying? So I think that I'm glad to see that Shotty's not saying one thing and then doing another. I'm glad that he said that he likes motion, shift, splits, and that we're actually able to see motions, the shifts, in the splits. And of course, they're not showing everything, but in practice to the media. But I'm glad to see that the little of what the media has seen, it is backing up what he said that we were going to be doing. Now, of course, we're still in June, so we have to see, okay, but what you're going to be looking like in September. But I'm glad to see that at least, we're practicing and we're seeing these concepts in early June.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think a head start is very important for this team. And as we close out, I mean, I think next week, I think we mentioned earlier, next week is going to be a mandatory mini camp. So, see Micah back in the building, probably see all the players back in the building. I don't know about Trayvon Diggs, if he'll still be down in Florida. But like I said, it'll be very exciting to see what these guys actually put on the field and just how how far they be able to progress, because with this new coaching staff on both sides, I'm just really confident these guys really have the, have the wherewithal to be able to move forward. And now they kind of built that chemistry. So now I think little by little it's kind of taking off from the field. We're kind of seeing the explosion from the rookies, and even just like you mentioned with Damone Clark, even Sam Williams, been hearing his name kind of ringing a little bit around camp as well. Necessarily, I don't want to necessarily say they're only underdogs, but I think rookies alike, maybe guys who have come from previous regimes,
Yeah.
we may have counted some of these guys out, coming with the new coaching staff coming in. Even, I mean, not he wasn't discounted all the way, but listen to some shows. They even spoke about Maris Leofau, being drafted last year as quote unquote a Zimmer guy, and saying maybe whether or not he has a chance to be on the field. But I think not just because of Shoddy, but I think he's going to get that fair chance as well. Of course, he's a young guy, he's a rookie. Not saying he would have gotten cut anyway, but I'm just saying that I think all guys are going to get the same chance to be able to be on the field. It's not going to be about who you came in under or who your sponsors are anymore. I think it's going to be about these guys coming out and, like they said from the beginning, trying to play their best five up front, trying to play in their best 4 or 5 up front as far as defense. The D line, the guys at the second level. I think they're going to actually, even the cornerback room, like you said earlier, still love to bring in that veteran at that piece, but just hearing the different things we're hearing from this guys, still be able to come up. Kalen Carson coming back from his injury. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I think it was Shotty who mentioned it, that Kyer Elam is actually one of the fastest guys at practice. They said they kind of clacked the guy's speed at practice. Yeah, and he's showing his speed. So, and of course, a Savon Rebel coming along. Of course, we still have Deron Bland. So, confident in that room, and I'm definitely confident to see what they will be able to see, but I can't, because it is still a long way out, a couple of months away from that. So, hopefully, with these position groups, that we'll see some battles come down to hopefully next week, and then of course with camp coming up, we'll just definitely see just how strong the fight is going to be to be able to be able to build this roster when the time comes.
Absolutely. I agree with what you said. I do like to take the chat at the end just to see if there's any questions that people ask. I don't want y'all to think we're ignoring your questions. It's hard to answer when we're in the middle of talking about it. Rico, you said, do you think Spoon will press Ferg for that 2v1? Yeah, I think Ferg is on the hot seat. Many people may not think that, but I think he is on the hot seat. I think that Spoon and Ravens fans 4 really took a step. But I think, the guy to really look for, I don't know what Spoon's training concept and stuff look like. I don't know. But I know Fan Ford has been putting in work with Boss Cowboy, personal trainer friend, Real Truth in OC. And we went over the notes last week or the week before last where Nick Harris said he looked unstoppable. So that was, I think that tight end room, like that's a position I want to see. True competition. Let's see. Because granted, if Ferg is on the field week 1, then I better see him performing at a high level like he was doing in 2023. Because if I see 2024 Ferg on the field, I'm gonna know politics. I'm gonna know politics. Coaches, Jerry, them, somebody forced him on the field because he's not performing. So, and then this is not a question, but this is a good comment. Common Sense Lab said that's the biggest part of the 90s team. The brotherhood is off the chart. Yep, I spoke about that, how the playmakers were saying that, that's what this team needed. They need a true brotherhood.
Yeah. Even to this day, you still see some of those players kind of, commingling with each other, being on shows, joining each other's podcasts, even joining some of the Cowboys podcasts, a DLLS. They've had some former players on there, and even some of the Cowboys podcasts that they have at the Star.
Exactly. And Angie, I think we shouted you out, but we didn't. We sorry. So shout out to you. You said you're getting your lashes done. So thank you for getting your lashes done. So I don't think that was any more questions. So all right, yes, I think we're ready to get out of here. We really appreciate y'all. Before we go out, please like the video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Stargazer Sports. Mickey is Cravin Cowboys without the G. We really appreciate y'all subscribing to our YouTube channel, supporting us by donating to our Cash App, which is there on the screen. Also just sharing the content and just continuing to help Mickey and I grow this platform, which is our joint show, but also grow our individual platforms. Really appreciate everybody being in the chat with us tonight.
Yeah, double down on anything Star just said. And appreciate you guys joining us. Hope you guys have a great evening. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time, sis. And we get to catch you guys next week.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you.